evening, good morning, good afternoon, g'day, mates, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, family from all over. Welcome. Actually, we don't welcome many boys and girls because you shouldn't be actually listening to this show. It is not for you. I am your host, Troy McCubbin. Thank you for joining us for another GuitarWank podcast. We are number 95. Woohoo! 95 to go. 95 and down, I should say, and 5 to go. So that's really cool. Massive thanks. I do a lot of massive thanks. If you're going to thank someone, just massively thank them. To all the people that reached out from our fans to, well, fans, listeners, whatever you guys want to be called. Some great emails, some great feedback on just everything. And it's just so amazing to hear from you guys and actually hear what you guys are going through and when you listen and what you like about the show, what you hate about the show. For the most part, I didn't get reamed from you guys. I got a lot of really touching and deep emotional emails from our listeners, and it was really, really cool, and it made me feel like, wow, we actually, coming up to 100 shows, we actually do affect people, and people really enjoy the show, and they love and hate what we have to say. I mean, right, we're just saying, you guys are joining us on the couch. Some shit we say is complete crap, and there might be some golden nuggets in there that you like. Hopefully you get a laugh, and it takes you out of your reality, and just you get to veg out and listen to our bullshit for, whatever you're doing. I had a guy email me about, he travels to work every day, he listens to the show, and it gets him through his week. He loves it, and he loved the intros. And some other people were like, dude, don't need to hear your opinion. And then we had another guy say, dude, it's your GuitarWank show and it's free, so say whatever the fuck you want. Kind of like that email, and I really appreciate him saying that. And that's kind of true. I'll say whatever the fuck I want. Until Bruce or Scott kick me in the nuts and say, dude, don't say that. Anyway, but I'm not even going to go with what's going on in America this week, because clearly my speech the other week didn't make any difference. Not that it would, I know that. But just dumbfounded, just numb and completely dumbfounded with what's going on in this country. Man, I just hope someone can stand up and stop this carnage. It's amazing. I know the rest of the world and a lot of Americans are just going, my God, how do we stop this? And they keep going around in circles. But anyway, I'm not gonna fucking go on about it, because what's the point? You guys know how I feel, and just heartbreaking. So we have finally we have Richard McDonald from Fender on the show. This is a really cool podcast. We had a lot of fun with Richard. Super interesting guy. Deals with everyone from The Edge and Bono to Eric Johnson to Don Was. Anyone big who plays a Fender, he's worked with them or had connections. Jeff Beck, Eric Clapton, who's who. Brad Paisley. Kind of cool to get the inside goss, and way different than what I thought about a big company like Fender. Big companies like, I know a lot of you guys are probably Apple guys like I am. We have studios, and you get so pissed off with Apple, like, what the hell are you doing? And these big companies just seem to lose their humanity. It just becomes money. And it was, I'm not going to give too much away, but it was just really, it was refreshing, because I grew up with Fender. It was Fender and Gibson, and that's all there was. And if I could have any of those guitars, life was just wonderful. And being a guitarist, that you quickly learn that doesn't exist. But anyway, you get a Fender or a Gibson, and it's like, oh man. So it was really cool to hear it from the horse's mouth. I'm going to stop yapping. Thank our sponsors, My Music Masterclass. Bruce has got another video coming out, which is going to be cool. I'm really excited about that. He was definitely pumped, and he was going to do some ass kicking on this new video. So I'm excited about that. Who else? My Music Masterclass, as I said. Wire World Pro Audio Cables. Jimmy Dunlop. D'Addario Guitar Strings. AEA Ribbon Microphones. They do an incredible job of making great ribbon microphones. Sennheiser microphones, of course. What else? Who else? Am I missing someone? Probably not. Exotic Pedals. I still need to find time to go see you guys. And yeah, and we need to do something cool for the 100th show. I'm trying to work out what that is with 5 weeks to go. And yeah, we're going to do at least a prize. Damn. Sponsors, this is where you come in. Earn your massive advertising that you get through GuitarWank. Woohoo! I don't know. Anyway, we're going to kick it off with Richard today. Richard McDonald from Fender. Scott and Bruce, we're all back in the hood again. So sit back, relax, enjoy the GuitarWank podcast number 95. If you're working out, drink some water. Just do one more lap. Do one more rep. One more 30 minutes on the treadmill. Whatever you're doing. If you're flying, we hope you got a good seat. You're not sitting next to some person that's just trying to take over all the seats. Or they stink. Man, I used to take trips to Russia. I don't want to piss off any Russian listeners, but I swear to God, I used to think traveling to Russia all the time, I thought, man, if I could take deodorant to Russia, I would be a millionaire. That was my big plan. I'm going to introduce Russia to deodorant, especially the men. So mainly focus on large Russian men. There definitely was a bathing problem or a deodorant problem, and I was going to solve it. And it could have been my calling. I don't know. I'm sure I'm going to get some Russian. We do have Russian listeners. And as much as I despise your country, no, I don't despise the people. I just despise. Thank you. Wow, I'm just trying to piss off at least someone every week. This is my goal now. I spent a lot of time in Russia, and it was, as you know, if you listen to the show, it's an interesting place. People are great, for the most part. When you're drinking vodka, you are super great, as we all are. But, yeah, interesting place. Anyhow, what was I talking about? Deodorant, getting it into Russia. That's my new gig. I really think I could maybe get on Shark Tank and take that to the next level. All right, but until then, this is my job. Charity work it is. Here we go, number 95. Guys, have an amazing, safe week. Please, let's be a community, stick together. And here's something for you. I need to find some guys in Los Angeles who just want to do some jamming. This is really off the cuff for me, but I need to do it. I'm becoming that guy in the bedroom because I'm not gigging at the moment. I kind of figure that maybe I should put together a Wednesday night, just hang and sit around and play some acoustics or whatever, but I need to jam with some other players. So email me. If you're in North Hollywood, Los Angeles area, and maybe you want to get together and do some jamming, I need work. I need to get my shit together and stop being I need to preach the words that Bruce is constantly preaching. Community. You can't get good just sitting in your bedroom playing by yourself, and I have been completely guilty of that. So I need to start interacting with other musicians. I'm actually looking for a drummer and bass player that I could just play with and get back to actually communicating with other musicians, which this show is all about. And I'm being the biggest guilty one of not doing it. I've become this bedroom guy, and it's driving me nuts, and I need to get out and play. So anyway, I've got a studio. I need to jam with some guys, so let's get together. Reach out to me on GuitarWank.com, and maybe we can set something up, and maybe I can actually step up to how Bruce is preaching, and even Scott, and actually talk the walk. Or is it walk the talk? Either or. Anyway, just email me. We'll get together. We'll drink. Have some beers, or I don't know. You don't have to drink. You can drink water. All right. Shut up, McGubbin. Let's get on with it. Richard from Fender, and we'll see you all next week. Be safe.
I hate the Dodgers.
I'm a football guy. I'm not a.
I grew up in San Francisco. Always liked San Francisco Giants, and the Dodgers always just kick our ass. So it's like my two favorite teams.
So you're rooting for the Astros.
The Astros.
Houston?
To Houston.
Yeah. My two favorite teams are the Giants and whoever's playing the Dodgers.
Well,
I'm a Cardinals fan, football, so that's sad. And pathetic.
Arizona.
That's sadder.
That's an Arizona Cardinals on top of it.
Arizona Cardinal.
That's like before even St. Louis.
Yeah, that's Kurt
My friend
Warner.
is a big Cardinals fan. He loves them.
Yeah, we.
Rams aren't doing bad this year. We got kind of a team,
I think it's neat.
Yeah,
I feel
I like
sorry
Grove.
for the Los Angeles Chargers. Do they have one fan here?
Yeah.
They're not. I just saw them lose the other night to.
I watched that too.
Yeah, who'd they lose to?
Oh gosh.
Ben Roethlisberger, his team.
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
the Steelers. They beat them. Yeah, but I'm going to go to a few Rams games this season.
This is an exciting team.
Yeah.
We got a young, exciting
Yeah,
quarterback.
it's fun, man. I went to the Dolphins Rams game last year at the Coliseum. It was really fun.
Oh,
and
that
the
sounds
Dolphins
great.
won.
Yeah.
So I was like, woohoo. All right.
Well, there you go. Welcome, GuitarWank.
Episode number 5,722 in dog years.
Right, in dog years. That's right. Mr. Scotty Henderson.
What's up, bitch?
Welcome. Mr. Bruce Foreman.
I'm here now.
Finally, it's only taken 95 episodes. And Richard McDonald
Hi.
from Fender.
Yeah.
Mate, thank you so much for being hanging out to have you. We tried to get you last time and I screwed it up because I had to go to New York.
Are you the CEO of the whole company?
No, I'm not. I'm the CPO, the Chief Product.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Chief
CPO,
Product
I don't know
Officer.
the difference.
Thank you,
CFO,
CPO. He's in Star Wars, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's Star Wars. Come on.
I've worked for 5. Always the bridesmaid, never the.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Okay.
Now, the connection was through Bruce. How did you guys meet each other?
We have a mutual friend has a studio in Arizona called Tempest. Clark Rigsby, who works a lot in LA as well.
Yeah.
Mutual friend who introduced us. Said you guys have a similar point of view. You should hook up.
Yeah, we'll get Clark on him when he comes to town.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah,
So basically, you guys are both drug dealers.
Yeah,
That's the deal.
yeah.
pretty much. Kind of a regional connection thing. Yeah.
So do you deal
I sell
out of
notes. He
Corona?
sells guitars.
We prefer Norco. No, just kidding.
Norco.
North Corona. No. I did work and live in Corona there at the factory, and lived in Corona for a couple of years. Spent most of my time in Scottsdale, and was part of the team that moved Fender back to California to the Los Angeles
Okay,
location.
so where is your office?
Sunset and Gower.
The old
you're right here.
Columbia
You're in
Studio.
town.
Yeah, the old Columbia
okay.
Square. They
No
kind of
shit.
revamped the whole thing, and
that's
it's
really cool. I didn't know that
fantastic.
Fender had an office there.
Please come. It's all the Fender product teams are there.
That's cool.
And,
Okay.
artist relations.
Yeah,
and
A lot of history in that building, right? Like massive history there.
Yeah, of
Huge.
course, dude.
huge. I mean, that was, you're talking about
The studio, the Columbia Studio.
Yeah, Bob Dylan, Barbra Streisand, Johnny Cash.
Wow.
I think War of the Worlds broadcast was
Yeah.
out of there as
Wow.
well.
Really? With Tom Cruise.
Yes, exactly.
Don't tell me
Yeah.
he redid that.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
haven't
he
seen
did.
it?
No.
Oh, yeah, he redid
It's
that.
actually a cool movie.
That's all right.
It's good. It's good.
Just
I
the
like it.
idea of it, I don't like it. I'm
I'm
sorry.
a huge Tom Cruise fan.
Well, he
but that's
doesn't
a cool
die in
movie.
the end. It's not that good, but it's pretty good.
If he dies at the end, I might go see it.
That's a Spielberg movie, isn't it?
I don't know. This
War of the
was
Worlds? Yeah,
this
it
was
is.
an
You can
Orson
find it.
Welles.
You might be right, yeah.
Yeah, I'm still stuck on the
really
Orson
good.
Welles, but
Yeah.
It's really good.
Wow, so there's a lot of history there.
oh,
That's
it's an amazing building. Yeah.
We did the tour. My dad and I would come down, and Richard took us around. It was awesome, man. It was really cool.
And it's
That
right next to Roscoe's Chicken
chicken waffles.
and waffles. So
Yeah.
you can't go wrong.
Do you go across? Or is
No,
it
no.
too much.
It's, there is a palm reading place next door, so I thought I could eat there, then go find out how long I have to live, but I ruled it out.
Well, you pretty much know if you eat there.
It's over pretty quick.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Clark knew Richard from Phoenix, or
Okay.
the
Yeah,
Phoenix
yeah.
area. You
Yeah.
know.
Produced and engineered a few records that I was on back in the 80s.
Yep. Wow.
Yeah. So, anyways, if you don't mind, you told me the story of how you got involved in Fender and just your life, that part of it. If you, as much as you want to tell, I would love for everybody else to get a chance to hear this.
Oh, well, absolutely. I guess it's weird because it's not lost on me that it's kind of a interesting story. But so I grew up being a Fender nut. I had the posters on my wall as a kid, the 70s posters where it was like send $1, and from a string ad or something, we'll send you a poster. And I had a little Fender Mustang, was one of my first better guitars, so I was always a Fender guy. Long story short, I ended up working at Denny's when I graduated from high school, and I was a busboy, and there was a dishwasher there named Walter Richardson. He and I became musical partners, and we formed a band and played together till I was about 35 years old. That's when I started at Fender. I went to Fender. I did the band thing. It was a journeyman experience. We had 3 recordings. It was all independent. We toured about 300 nights a year.
Wow, for how long? How long did you do that?
We did that schedule for about 8 years.
Wow.
Beer band type of thing. You'd see the ads and it'd be like 69-cent Coronas and Morningstar. But it was a really fun band, very upbeat, fun band. But when it was over. And so my dad called me, and I was living in Phoenix. My father called me and said, gosh, Fender's moved an office to Scottsdale. My dad had a great sense of humor, so I hung up because I thought, what an ass, right? I'm basically unemployed, been just out of rehab, starting to get up on my own 2 feet, right?
Yeah.
And sure enough, it was the truth. And I had an artist relations rep named Mark Wittenberg, and he was at Fender, and I had an endorsement through Miller Beer.
God, how can I get a Miller Beer endorsement?
Right,
That's what I need.
When you can't afford a publicist and all that stuff, and you're in that thing, they were unbelievably good. There was about 20 bands, 15 bands maybe. It was people like Marcia Ball and the Fabulous Thunderbirds, the Del Fuegos, Morningstar.
Yeah.
Bands like that.
And
they just acted like your publicist. We'd go back to Milwaukee, drink way too much beer, first thing in the morning till night, do photo shoots, do radio and television commercials, and then before you pulled into Chicago to play at the Cubby Bear or something, they had to run the advertisements, they had the table tents up, and all the old school marketing stuff that we could have never really pulled off at our level. So it was great, and as part of it was, I had a couple of $1,000s every year at Fender that I could spend. So that's how I met the guys at Fender, and I put in the application, and your self-esteem gets a little bit jacked when you're kind of coming out of addiction and things like that, and just the band broke up. It was a great run, and it was an incredible experience, but at the end it was hard and negative, and
like every marriage, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I know the 8th week on the road when you don't speak to each other, and that's all great. Anyway, so I went down and applied. They had 2 jobs: the mailroom and the parts department, but it was called the small parts department. So it was even more insulting. Right? It's like, if your parts are small, we have a place for you.
Right. Yeah.
And so I applied for the job. And I didn't get either one. And I thought, that's just, I've been playing Fender guitars professionally for years. I've been a Fender guy my whole life, and I can't get an entry-level job at a company in the mailroom or in the parts department.
Right.
And so I in those days, they sent you a letter. Right, or they left you a message, but I got a rejection letter, which always feels better, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, it's penetrating, and it's like, oh, thanks for taking the time to write me.
Yeah.
And I remember these are the times in your life when, like the Bob Dylan, the Mystery Trap, it's all off on you, right?
Yeah.
It's like, dude, look, you're working so hard at this, you're all cleaned up, everything. What good is it doing? You're making all these sacrifices.
Now I got to ask, what was the addiction of choice?
Cocaine was the problematic thing for me. The drinking and stuff was just something to do while you were up.
Doing cocaine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was, it was just so associated with business.
Scene,
and
right?
like what was your living? Of course, we're talking about this is like a full-on kick in the balls. So, like, what was your living situation like while you're going through this rejection from Fender and looking for a day gig and you're getting through rehab?
Yeah.
What was that like?
That was pretty interesting. I lived in a friend of mine, John Collar, who's passed away since then, but John Collar was a buddy of mine that was just a guy that used to see the band from Milwaukee, and he converted his garage. When I say converted, he put some drywall up in his garage, and I was living in his garage at this time. So I'm divorced, I got 3 kids, and drugs are one thing, but decisions are another. You make decisions, and I made a succession of really bad ones. And I was in that frame of mind where it's so convenient to blame everybody else for all the things that are fucked up in your life, right? So I was going through that, and living in John's garage.
In Phoenix?
In Tempe, Arizona.
Was there air conditioning in this garage?
No.
In Phoenix.
And if for this story to be right, there shouldn't be.
Yeah, there's no air conditioning.
Phoenix. This was before it got really hot there. It was only like 108 in the summer.
I think the house had evap actually, which was what we had before air conditioning. And long story short, about 2 weeks later, they called me, and they said, you still...
Fender called you back?
Yeah.
You got a second chance?
The HR department, are you still available? I'm thinking to myself, yes.
Let me look. Oh, yeah.
I'm still sitting on a mattress on the floor, and a guy next to an oil stain, right? And but I was very grateful for the place to live, and I always later... I returned the favor for John years later, and it felt good. They called me back. I went in. That whole day was another story because the only clothes I had were stage clothes. So what do you put a suit on or something when you go for a job interview, right? The only suit I had was this purple suit that I looked like I dropped out of Morris Day's band or something, or the Joker or something. Yep. And I went there on a casual Friday. So if you're not a corporate guy, casual Friday is the day they let you wear jeans. And so I show up in a purple suit on the day when everyone's wearing, jeans to work, to feel like a big idiot.
This is cool.
And they offered me the job in the parts department at Fender.
And make sure you don't go anywhere else. Just stay there.
In the small parts department. One of the first things I did was lobby to get the small off of it. Right. But it ended up being a fantastic opportunity. And when I sat down at my desk and I turned to the guy next to me to ask him how to turn the computer on, because I might have lied about my computer skills on my resume. I'm like, how do you turn this thing on?
Yeah.
And so we started talking, and he says, well, they gave this job to some guy, but he was here for like 4 days or something. I'm like, well, what happened? Apparently he failed his drug screening.
Oh, no.
And I was like, isn't that interesting? Because the HR guy had asked me, dude, like on the side, can you pass, And I'm like, I'm probably the cleanest guy you know. You could take a bone marrow transplant, I'm your man.
Right.
And so ironically, I got my job because someone failed their drug screening.
And how long you've been clean by that point?
Probably 8 months, 6, 8 months.
Was that tough? Like, I mean,
what part?
Like the whole getting off the cocaine and stuff?
My life was so jacked up that I had absolutely lost faith in my ability to make good choices like that. So it wasn't that hard. I was done. The pain was much more than the pleasure. At that point, it gets easy to change when you get to that point. Right? Yeah. So it was a crazy start.
So you started the thing, and I have this friend who ran BMI. He's a huge. He went way beyond that. He's a major guy in the publishing world right now. And when he went to work, got his first gig at BMI, it was like the mail room or something like that. We're talking the 40s, I think, 50s. And he got there and he realized that, like, you know, everybody there, like, there weren't a whole lot of people that knew anything about music. They were all like, they just had the business worked out, you know, and they were just kind of going through the thing. And he realized that he would have a lot of upward motion because he knew the business, that he knew music, and he knew, you know, the whole thing. I imagine you must have felt somehow that way yourself. I mean, being a player and knows what, I mean, you're obviously, Fender sells instruments to players and to people who play. So, like, being from that perspective, I imagine there's a lot of lifers in there that just kind of work a job, right? Or were at one time, or is that different?
Well, there's always been an interesting mix of players. Brands like Fender attract guitar people, whether they're accountants or, but there was, you know, a large percentage of people that, you know, weren't really like that. Yeah. What was interesting for me was I thought I knew all about Fender. And I certainly had spent my life looking at it from the outside in, you know. And then when I got there, I realized, you know, the first 3 phone calls I got, you know, in the parts department. And we had these books like they do at Napa. Remember back in the day, you'd go to the automotive store and they'd be like, I have a 63 Chrysler, you know, starter. That's what we had, you know, these books and all these handwritten notes that tribal knowledge that people had passed down. And I started getting these phone calls like, yeah, I'm looking for the tone canister for my Sound Dimension 4. You know, the toxic thing in the middle. You know, it's like, and, you know, there was a little piece of paper that said, yeah, this guy in Canada has them, you know. So I'd say, well, you know, call this guy in Canada. But the calls were just unbelievable that people were so passionate about keeping their products in service. Right. This was my dad's deluxe reverb. Can I get a replacement transformer for it? Yes, but you got to modify the chassis. You know, you're having all these kind of conversations with people, and you discover the emotional, you know, the emotional affinity that people have for the brand is just unbelievable. It's shocking, and so I got a great appreciation for it. And then that's where all my experience started coming in. You know, just I played in every city, so I had something in common to talk to people about, where they lived or if they knew this place or that. You know, so it was easy to build relationships and friendships with dealers and distributors around the world. And yeah, it was an incredible experience. There are some really talented, passionate people, and a lot that have come and gone over the years, but left their fingerprints, you know, and these are great guitar builders and players and designers and stuff. So it's just a marvelous environment for an old guitar person.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Now, how do you go from the mailroom to where you are now? I mean,
he was in the parts department.
A small parts department. Jim Perlman, if you're still out there. Jim got the mailroom job. I didn't. I got the parts department. That's a great question. It felt like alien abductions. I just got picked up one day and dropped into a new role. I was 35. I was desperate. I had a high school diploma, 3 kids to support.
Yeah.
I made, after the paycheck that I got at Fender the first couple years was $408 a month. So I got 2 checks of $204 every 2 weeks. So I made $408 a month. So I still played a lot in the evenings. I just saw opportunity. I just saw people, you know, when you're a musician and you have to be scrappy, you have to, you know, your bread doesn't just get buttered for you because you showed up, right?
Yeah.
You have to work your ass off. And so I think that ethic kind of came through. And then I did some very purposeful things. I bought the clothes like the guys wore that had the jobs I wanted. I just played the game a little bit.
Yeah.
It wasn't really like I was losing my identity. I was just trying to, you know, move up a little bit.
Move up, yeah.
And then great mentors.
Yeah.
Great mentors. Dan Smith, you know, John Page, you know, these master builders and craftspeople and, guys that hand wound pickups, and Abigail Ybarra, who just retired after 57 years.
Wow.
These
Then
people,
she's the lady that wound all those pickups,
yeah,
right?
forever. Yeah.
At what point did she stop?
It's been a few years back, but not pretty recently, yeah.
Well,
she still was winding it, and she may be winding out of her home right now because we tried to set up like a retirement thing for her.
Wow.
I don't know where that ever went, but we're very loyal to her because she was unbelievably loyal to the company.
Yeah.
It's a great company. It's a bunch of guitar people, and the reputation, I think, from the outside, and much of it earned through some odd interactions with people. But once you really get behind the veil, and it's an unbelievably human company with people that are well intended and trying to do the best they can.
What now? Where does Leo Fender fit in all this? Like, where does? I know we talked about it the day we're at the shop, but
when
explain that.
when the CBS transaction went down in '65, I think it's the same year they bought the Mets, right? They paid like more for Fender than they did the Mets. One of those investments, I think, probably turned out a little better.
Yeah.
Leo went to do G&L guitars, and so we never had the right to Leo's name. We had the Fender brand registration, but we didn't have rights to Leo's image or name.
So hold it. So did Leo sell Fender to CBS?
Correct.
And that's why they say pre-CBS. Is it pre? That's a big thing, right?
That is a big thing. My opinion about that's changed a lot over the years, but Don Randall was Fender sales, and Leo was and his crew were the product side. Yeah. So I think it was a sale for both of them. I think they had some interest, and of course Don went on to do Randall amplification and all the different things he did. Yeah. And Leo went on to G&L, and Bill Schultz got the name Fender. That's it. And so we danced around Leo's name for many years, and tried to be right by that agreement. Yeah.
Did you ever meet Leo?
No, I never did.
No.
No.
And what was his take on it all? I mean, his name is so iconic. I mean, Leo Fender, and as an outsider who doesn't know a lot about it, but I always think of Leo Fender like kind of Les Paul, that. Is it different?
I don't know the man, but I've had to represent the company and tell the story so many times that I have a point of view about it. I honestly feel people like Leo, or people, it's like the anatomy of a serial killer. Everybody wants to tear it apart and say why they're the way they are, right? Yeah. I don't think he was thinking about changing the world. I don't think he was thinking about keeping track of what he was doing. He was always moving forward. And so at the time, I think he had a big ass check in his hand. Right. Yeah. And he had lost his wife, and he and Phyllis, his second wife, who was just a delightful woman that I see regularly. When I say regularly, get the opportunity to see her once or twice a year is great. She's an unbelievably vibrant woman. You can see why Leo was in love with her. And just keep the legacy. Yeah. Keep the legacy alive.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, we have his name, just the last name. We're just missing.
Yeah. I mean, it's so iconic. But was he was his thing just guitars? Like
Didn't he
Leo's?
do Music Man? Wasn't he involved with them too?
Oh yeah.
The amps?
Yeah,
and,
right.
And there was some stuff that he did with George Fullerton and Forrest White. Did some Forrest White.
So he was doing guitars, amps, all that stuff, right?
Yeah, Leo was an accountant by trade. Went to Fullerton College for accountancy, I guess you call it. Played saxophone a little bit, but was just a huge music fan. Had been, it's not an overnight success story. He was fixing radios that his uncle gave him from an automotive repair shop that he had up in Sacramento or something, and repairing them as a hobby. When he started the business, it was in his parents' house. He was born like many people at that time in California, born at home, and started his business at home and gradually, went into business with Doc Kaufman to produce some instruments. And Doc Kaufman got a little cold feet, traded out. And that's the K&F era. You'll find the lap steels and some amplifiers from the K&F era. And then Leo went on his own, but it wasn't an overnight sensation, like he got up one morning and shat the Stratocaster. It didn't happen like that.
Yeah, yeah.
In the transition from lap steels, you really see it. When you look at a lap steel, then you look at a Telecaster, you're like, oh, this isn't that far-fetched.
No, you're right.
If you're looking at an acoustic or a Gibson, jazz box or something, maybe it's a little different. But when you're looking at a lap steel and you look at a Telecaster, you can kind of see how he got there. And we have all those first archival instruments. We've been able to repurchase our history over the years. Wow. So we have some of those early K&F instruments. It's really interesting. Was it really like, because I think of Les Paul and Leo Fender, was it they kind of polar opposites, as in they did Gibson and Fender. They designed those guitars, and that was their contribution. I mean, Les Paul did way more because he did the recording stuff too. Yeah, he was an innovator and a brilliant musician and everything else. Yeah, but
they were similar but very different. I guess.
Yeah, I think what Leo did was bring his take on product, which was product should be serviceable. It should stay in service. Mm-hmm. You should be able to repair it and replace it, and that's where the bolt-on necks and using skilled labor, but not the level of craftsmanship that's required to make a neck joint on an L5 or something. It's a different skill set.
Yeah.
And you could break the neck and replace it, and he had a different kind of a different point of view, and they're both brilliant in their own in their own approach. Yeah. He was an interesting guy. He was a fan.
Yeah, yeah.
I love the visuals of that post-war era, especially along the agricultural belt, where you've got these bands similar to your psycho cowboy thing that you do. You had these swing bands that were touring, and they'd come into these small communities, and people from all over would come to these shows, and there'd be 2,000 people. And they're on the back of a flatbed truck or something, and they're playing their show. It's not the Hollywood thing where it's like everybody's got their Sunday best on and they're square dancing. It's like there's a lot of people in the middle of some field or venue, and there's Leo Fender, and he's standing there saying, "Wow, if I even move this way, I can't hear the bass, or the bass play. I can't hear the upright bass at all." I think all this as a fan was just in his head, so he started, befriending the musicians and trying to make instruments that were interesting to them.
Yeah, yeah.
And he would wait in line till they're loading the bus, just like people do today, to come to your shows to meet you. And he would be there to meet them and say, "Hey, I made this, I made this guitar. What do you think about it?" And that's really how it started. And even the later innovations, it's interesting how the history gets so kind of twisted. It's the precision bass was launched in '51 as well. There was no adoption worth even talking about for like 10 years with that instrument, but they just didn't give up on it. And until some of the gospel and Motown guys got their hands on it and put their acoustic basses down and picked it up, then it started taking off. But it was a slow burn for a decade, and that's one of our most innovative, coolest.
Yeah.
Modern musical, that bass kicking, getting them, it just changed everything.
There, yeah.
Yeah, speakers and guitar amplifiers, and there were no what's that surround, like rubber surrounds that really give you the big excursion rates for the bass amps and that. There were public address speakers, and Leo engineers worked with people like James Lansing to kind of come up with new speakers designs, and so he drove a ton of innovation. Just a brilliant guy, but that's kind of third of the story.
Yeah.
The story really, why is Fender after 70 years still relevant? Why do people still give a shit? It's because those things went into the hands of musicians who made music that people care about.
That changed the world.
And that body of work is just halos over us.
Yeah.
And as long as we keep that dialogue going, does this work? Is this what you're talking about? As long as we can do that and keep young people grabbing these instruments and making new music that people care about, that cycle of relevance is complete. And it's the conversations with the guitar players, the entry-level guys and the best players on the planet, that give shape, to the product development and everything else. So there's a lot of the innovations that we have, even just the relicing that you see on guitars today that Custom Shop's kind of famous for. That's all from guys coming in like Don Was and people like that going, I like your bass, but it's too shiny.
Right.
I could never be seen on stage with such a shiny new thing. And I think the guys over there just got clever and reproduced some of the nicks and burnishing of his favorite bass and put it in his hands, and then next thing you know, it's like stonewashed jeans. Everybody wants
Right, everybody's paying people to ruin their jeans for them.
I prefer to do it you've seen my guitar. It's like pizza and cocaine. Eats the paint right off every time. Nitrocellulose, if you add scotch to that, nitrocellulose has nothing to push back on.
Yeah.
So you got into position. How long you been in the position you are in now? What's the
assume the position?
Well, he's been on the couch here for about 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's feeling pretty good. I've been the executive vice president of Fender for a few years. I was the senior vice president, chief product officer, and the CMO for about a decade before that.
Right.
I was the guitar guy before that, the amplifier guy before that, the audio guy before that, and the small parts guy before that.
So you've gone through the whole gamut of the company of different...
Yeah, I've worked in all the product areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how have you seen Fender change over the years?
It's been... we were a small... It's a 70-year-old company, but it was... When I started, it was a small company. Yeah. It's really, had three kind of lives. The Leo from, till 65 to 85, and then 85 on. And so it was a very small company, small teams, talented people. Dan Smith was really the guy that was the mentor and guitar-centric guy that Bill Schultz understood, what was going wrong. Some of the guitars from the 80s are unbelievable. We've all had them, right? I was playing a Tokai reproduction or something because it was a better 62 Strat than the reissue Strat that weighed, the guitars could weigh 10 pounds plus. They had a ton of lacquer. That said, Edge changed the world with one. Yeah. Hendrix had no problem with them. A lot of people are like, CBS area, shit by crap. It's like, well, be careful. Yeah. And the old ones are worth a lot of money, but they're not that great. There's some special, there are certainly some special guitars. Yeah. But I've seen so many 50s, 54 Strats and things like that they look hand carved almost. It was very different. The consistency was very different. You see guys at like a sanding bench or something, and they're not wearing shirts. They're smoking. There's like a 55-gallon drum of acetane right next to them, and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing for lunch?" "I don't know. What do you want to do?" There? "Oh shit,
Right.
That neck comes out a little shape is a little different than the other one, and So the uniqueness of them is I think part of it, but the guitars have all have something special about them. I'm proud of the work that we've done though in the last many years. We really try. The custom shop is unbelievable what they do.
That's got to be a fun part of your job, is like you getting to deal with all these huge players. Like who are some of the guys I mean, Eric Johnson, he just did a model, right? Or he's got a model coming out?
We just did another one. We just, I don't think it's that big of a secret because he's blogging about it. It's a thin line Stratocaster, which is kind of interesting. Thin line, so it's a semi-hollow Strat. But it still has the body contours and stuff, so we never could figure that out, but today we've figured out how to do it. So it still has the arm contour, the belly contour that's nice for longer gigs, and but it's semi-hollow. So Eric Johnson, Eric Clapton, Richie Blackmore, John, he broke up with us though, so.
John who?
Mayor, yeah. Yeah. So, but...
he broke up with you?
Well, we had a signature model.
Was it something you said?
I think it was something we did. Yeah.
But all these cats that come in and have these signature, how... Are some of them just like, that's good enough? Or are most of them really on board, like anal about it?
Yeah, more B than A.
Okay. So they're pretty on top of it.
It all depends. There are guys that are like, you ask them a question, so what kind of wood would you like the body to be made out of? And they're like, guitar wood, It's like,
right. They got no idea.
They have no idea.
Right.
They have no idea.
I want blue wood.
Right. And then other guys like Eric Johnson, have an unbelievable... we produced the Van Halen stuff too, the EVH brand stuff. I mean, he's another guy that hears stuff that people don't hear,
Yeah.
So Eric, we made many sets of pickups for Eric before he landed on the ones he wanted. But
right.
That instrument pushed our regular, USA production, increased our capabilities. Projects like that make you better.
Yeah.
And so you can thank guys like that for some of the innovation and evolution.
Yeah, I imagine Eric's pretty detailed oriented,
Yeah, guitars are weird. They're fashion. They're
Yeah.
If you ask Yngwie, why do you play a white guitar? It's like, I always wear black. You couldn't see the guitar if I didn't play a white guitar. That's a silly question, So it's fashion, and it's all the interesting, elements of technique, and
that'd be kind of cool. I mean, dealing with Yngwie would be a trip. I imagine that's a trip.
I love the guy. I think, he gets his own joke. He's a supremely talented guy.
Oh my God, yeah.
He's the last man standing, and he was such an inspirational thing. You don't get it until you go someplace with him.
Yep.
Go to a NAMM show or something and walk across the parking lot with the guy, and people run at him. He has an unbelievably loyal fan base, and,
I didn't know he was that big.
He's very popular.
Big as in stature.
Oh, physically, yeah.
Physically, I saw him at NAMM, and I was like, oh my God, I feel like I just saw Elvis. I mean, he had that whole vibe going on,
He's a great guy. Loves tennis. That's one of the things that he and I always. He's another tennis. He had a beautiful tennis court on his property, but he wasn't using it because he had a wallaby in it.
What?
Yeah, so that's a longer story that Yngwie should probably tell. But yeah, he ended up getting rid of the wallaby and playing tennis on the. Yeah.
Where's he live?
In Florida.
He is in Florida. We had a listener, and I'm sure they're listening right now, but they keep writing. It's like, I was at my supermarket in Florida the other day, and I keep running into Yngwie at the supermarket. I don't know if he's bullshitting me or telling the truth, but
no, he runs his son to school and stuff, and he's a family guy. He's a friend. He's an extraordinarily talented, nice guy.
Yeah. And
everybody has their thing. Another thing that people don't realize too is that level of professionalism. It doesn't matter if that guy's doing a half-hour clinic, appearance or something. He will rehearse, set up, sound check, go through the whole thing with a meticulous detail to make sure that, you know, that whoever's there is going to get the full-on experience. And I know a lot of guys that don't do that.
Right.
Just pretty much
call it in, right?
phone it in.
Yeah.
But this year we worked with Brad Paisley, who's also just a marvelous
I'm a
guitar
huge
player.
Paisley fan.
Did a really innovative guitar with him that
Yeah.
weighs, you know, barely weighs over 6 pounds. Beautiful Telecaster.
And, you know, I finally got to play one, and I almost felt like I didn't have the money's worth in my hand because it was so light.
Yeah, it's so light.
It was like, is this real? It was
It
ridiculous
is.
light. Are you guys going
sounds
to put a
great.
G bender in it? You don't know.
I don't know. You know, that's Polonia in the middle. It's really soft, and then it's got some hardwood shells on it.
Yeah.
That's how they get the lightweight. And you have to like really. That's a lot of routing on a guitar.
What's that?
You reef on a B-bender. There's a lot of pressure on it. I mean, how would you fix that
I don't
harness
know.
into it if the screws would pop out
Yeah, right.
of soft wood, right?
Yeah, I mean that
I'm
wole
sure it's a problem.
big ass mechanism.
I mean, I've been with Scott. You know, when he's got his guitars, and there's like 10 of them, and he's weighing them, and he's playing them, and you know, it's like a whole thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've watched
yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's.
Richie Blackmore?
Yes.
Did you work with him?
I did.
How was he? Because he
He's-
just seems like a really interesting cat.
He is a very interesting guy, and he is, you know. I'm 60 next year. I mean, Deep Purple. You know, that was just so influential. So I was nervous about meeting him. He really doesn't really care about Deep Purple.
Right.
I tried for several years to get his. He had a really interesting Strat, you know, with like a dummy load pickup in the middle, and you know, he had some cool stuff. Some of the scalloping, the early stuff, and so I worked for several years to get a contract with him. But he was doing his Blackmore's Night with his wife Candace.
Is that the medieval kind of shit?
That is the dance like a druid,
Right.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was making like amps with canvas cover and stuff for him at the time. An unbelievably nice guy.
Yeah.
Who would talk very comfortably. You know, when I'd ask real fanboy questions. We were at dinner in Long Island, and I asked him if, you know, about Lazy, and he said, "Oh, that was an old like fiddle. That was like an old folk fiddle riff," and I just kind of like borrowed it and messed around with it and stuff, and just really easy to talk to about that. But really was not interested in what he had done, you know, as Richie Blackmore, the Deep Purple guy, Rainbow guy. You know, it was all about, you know, the Roush Fife and that thing, you know, lutes and silly hats, you know.
Right.
which is
So he
just-
doesn't buy
Renaissance
into
fair.
any of it.
I'll tell you a great story, actually. So we're leaving a restaurant. Now picture Richie, right? Picture the hair, the mustache, right? The pencil mustache, the black hair to about here, you know, collar length hair. And we're walking out of the restaurant, and a busboy chases us down, or a waiter or something. Excuse me, sir. He chases us out of the restaurant, and Richie turns around and he goes, "Were you in Black Sabbath?"
Really?
Yes. And so I'm waiting, right?
Yeah.
I'm just waiting, and I'm adding it up. I'm like, I could get that, you know. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I wasn't, but my hair and mustache were. No, he won't answer that. you know?
Yeah.
And he just looked at the guy and said, "Sure," and turned around and walked away. And I was just like, wow, a day in the life of Richie Blackmore. You know,
Yeah.
are you Tony Iommi? No.
Yeah. Oh my God. How many times do you get that? Right.
Pretty interesting, but a very nice man who, you know, super influential for rock guitar players.
Such a
Right.
monster. Clapton. Have you worked with Clapton much?
By the time I came into the scene, Eric worked a lot with Dan Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Dan's son Jason still works for us, builds in the custom shop. No, I deal with layers of attorneys. So it's like
Wow.
layers.
Yeah.
But he's still very, you know, supportive, and we did the tweed versions of his amps, the Tweed Twins and Deluxes and Champs and that. Very cool amplifiers. His guitar's always been a great seller. People enjoy it. The active.
Is there a
assembly.
signature model that outsells everything?
No, signature models are least
artist
selling models.
Artist models.
Of the artist,
signature artist models.
They change over the years, but the Clapton's probably the long runner. Yngwie's, Yngwie and Clapton were the first two signature models. Now, depending on who you talk to, one of them, one guitar took longer than the other, or whatever. But those were the first guys. That was the 30 years now, so 30th anniversary of
but
that.
Still, the Telly and the Strat are the.
You know what happened? Yes, it's been the Telly and the Strat, and it was pretty frustrating. And I kept trying to change new silhouettes and get things going. When I was the guitar product guy, we sold 400 Jaguars and 400 Jazzmasters a year. And when I did my budgets and forecasts and all that, it was real easy. 400, Candy Apple Red, Sunburst, a couple painted head caps for those because the phone's going to ring. Then I got a phone call one day from Justin Norvell, who is my successor as the chief product guy at Fender. And he called me from South by Southwest and said, well, dude, I got good news and bad news. I'm like, well, give me the bad news first. And he said, nobody's playing a Strat. And I was thinking to myself, how could there be any fucking good news? Nobody's playing a Strat,
Right.
And I'm like, well, give me the good news. And he goes, everybody's playing like a modified Jaguar or Jazzmaster through a Silverface amp. Okay, Silverface amps, to the snobs, the pre-CBS guys, the Silverface is, oh my gosh, junk. If you're thinking about Zodiac series, if you remember some of the first solid state amps, but most of the tube amps, the circuits didn't change because there was a contract signed. It took years before that stuff changed. So 65 is pretty much like a 67. It's pretty, for the most part. And so I forgot where I was. Where were we? What were we talking about?
Well,
Brain surgery.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And so all of a sudden, now today, that silhouette, that body shape is a big business. I don't know how many units we do, and we're a private company, so we don't talk about this stuff, but a lot.
Wow.
And it's an extraordinary popular guitar these days, and you've got people like Ed O'Brien, that are the new kind of guitarist, which is a more textural. The virtuosity thing is it ebbs and flows in guitar, and at this point it's much more about sonic landscapes and things like that. So Jaguars and Jazzmasters have been unbelievably popular, and then the student models, things like the Duosonics and Mustangs and instruments like that have become very popular as well. So we improved them and made them actually playable, and they're short scale, fun, really cool guitars that you can get into for like $500 or something.
Yeah. Some of your stuff is, when I was a kid, you'd have to pay a lot of money to get something decent, and now,
that's what's
for
really
a beginner,
different.
You can pick up such a cheap guitar, and it's fine. It's amazing what you can get
for $99, $199.
It's ridiculous.
I think a Mustang in the 70s was probably $250, $270, and it had the tremolo that guaranteed that you couldn't play in tune and stuff,
Right.
And used Strat was maybe $400 or something. I used Les Paul. You get a gold top for $400.
Yeah.
That was like an entry. Getting a used guitar. Today it's like $99, $199. There's Squier products that are just amazing. There's a bunch of guys out there, kind of the frugal obsessives that buy the Squiers, then put in Lindy Fralin pickups or Bartolini systems if it's a bass, and they supercharge these $200 guitars. It's amazing.
Well, I guess if you're going to go out on the road, why take your 60 whatever Strat out when
Those-
you could just do that and
I think those guys are, you can get replacements for that. These are the guys that record, and they're guitar players, but they
right. Okay.
but they also want a bass or
Yeah.
third or fourth guitar for some people. I mean, Fenders are still, unless you're in the custom shop and really designing something specific, that's still a great value. It's my gosh. I mean, you can buy anywhere from $500 up. I think a pro level type guitar is probably $1,300-$1,400 today.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
yeah.
Les Paul's going to cost you $3,000 or $2,800 or this week, who knows? But
Yeah.
still, it's
And it's pretty
quite a
much
difference.
has been like Les Paul. I mean, Gibson and Fender. Like they're kind of the two iconic, right? Am I right?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's kind of like
Those
north and south.
Yeah, like you're a
plus and
Gibson, you're a
minus.
Gibson guy or a Fender guy. That's kind of always been the thing.
Yeah.
And Gibson don't seem to be doing that well. Am I wrong?
Well, it ebbs and
right.
If you believe what you read in the
ebbs and flows. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think that what a great brand. If you need a Gibson, only a Gibson will do.
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
need a Fender, get a Fender. If you
Yeah.
need something else, it's so subjective, right? And tone and feel, and it's such a personal thing. But it's a great brand, and I know a lot of people that work there, and they love the brand, and so just
Yeah.
hope
God,
that-
I love my old Gibsons are great, man. Those are great guitars.
yeah, and they're like an investment portfolio too.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but
You have the wrong ones, or what?
well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that much.
You play those ones with the L's and stuff, right?
Yeah.
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 Well,
Yeah, I mean, and they're like 60s,
Yeah.
late 60s, early 70s. Something.
I mean, and those are instruments that Selmer Mark for,
Yeah.
yeah. Those are instruments that have a huge body of work, and I think that's what it really comes down to. It's like,
Yeah.
are they inspirational because of the body of work that
Yeah.
they created, and
Yeah.
and
Now, what about say? I mean, definitely probably in the last, I don't know how many years, but the boutique guitar makers and guitar amp makers. I mean,
It's awesome.
we've got people like Sir and Bogner and all these different guys that are coming up who are almost taking some of the Fender stuff to the next level in their direction that they take it.
Sure.
How has that affected you guys because you guys are covering beginners to pro,
Right.
with I guess people like Sir and they're more pro, I would imagine.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
where
very refined taste. You
Yeah.
know, players, Scott is not going to typically walk into a music store and
yeah.
just grab stuff, but you have in the past maybe played performance or
I had a reissue 92. I did that album Dog Party with a Fender. It was like I guess it was a 92 it was a 60 something reissue that was made in 92.
it was a 62 reissue, the Rosewood,
Yes,
right?
the Rosewood.
Right.
It was made in '92, and I'm one of those guys. I put Lindy Fralin pickups on
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Because at that time, I didn't know John then, but at that time, Lindy Fralins were the kind of they had those Woodstock pickups. They were nice, you know.
They were
kind of
nice.
that really sweet Stevie Ray kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And but then when I met John. And he was working at the custom shop.
Yeah, he was brilliant
when
builder.
I met
Yeah.
him, and
Yep.
he made me a Fender,
Yeah.
just a Strat, and it was way better than my reissue Strat because
Yeah.
of course he made it in the custom shop
Yeah.
and exactly like I wanted it.
Yeah.
And then so when he started his own company, I just went with him,
Yeah.
and I was his first endorser.
He's a talented
Yeah,
guy.
we had him on the show. He's a fun guy.
And he's got some cool amps,
But,
and
yeah.
Seiki Goto worked for us
Yeah.
for years, and
Oh
so
yeah,
we have,
I know. Oh yeah,
yeah,
sure. Of
yeah.
course.
So I
She's a
worked
friend
with
of mine, yeah.
worked with Seiki for
Yeah.
many years.
Yeah.
So our attitude, our culture inside is for me that what I try to project is there's enough for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is, and we live in a very fragmented age, and it's a fragmented world. Everyone has a unique need that requires a unique solution, and so what you see now is in a global in this global catalog that we have with the web and stuff, people are able to really seek out their what's special and unique if they want to brand themselves with.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a point of view where you can look at it, and I'll admit, I'm more excited when I see somebody do something fresh that's really cool, and people are, because it's just like you guys, I mean, we've been looking at the same thing for a long time, right? But I mean, we have it's a family, and guys like John Page, Jay Black, they make guitars today. They worked for us for years, and we're better for having guys like John Sir work for us. We all learn from each other. And
yeah.
So I've heard those names. I've heard John mention those names, though I've never met those guys. But John talks about them all the time.
Those guys are just first class,
Sure.
super talented guys. Yeah. And you have to remember, this brand was just like not happening, And Bill Schultz, you got to give him credit for putting it back into the hands of guitar players, even to the point, for during my era. I've always had the right. I've always had the card that I can just throw that says stop it, stop production.
Yeah.
Don't ship another thing. Don't ship one more guitar. And unfortunately, we've had to do that a few times because we're making guitars for global consumption. The custom shop is one thing, but we're making over 1 million guitars a year, or sourcing, and some years a lot more than that. And so it's he put guitar players back in charge versus value engineering and stuff like CBS did, which is how you ended up with pop metal bridges and guitars that just weren't.
Which is one of the reasons that I guess I went to Sir, because you couldn't get at that time, you couldn't get what I wanted on a stock Fender.
Yeah,
you'd have to get it at the custom shop.
Exactly.
But the thing is even though I play a Sir, I'm still using like a vintage Fender bridge, which you can only get from Fender.
And if I remember, we supply.
You supply John with those bridges.
Yeah, because
and my signature model, Sir, it wouldn't be my signature model unless it had a vintage Fender bridge, because I still believe that's the best sounding bridge.
It is absolutely the best.
A regular 6-screw bridge, totally old school. Though we've modified it a little bit to make it stay in tune better. But and we take the you guys, I don't know why this, maybe you can answer this because it's a weird thing, but for a while you guys have been powder coating the blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't do very much for the tone. It kind of, when there's a layer of powder coating between the block and the plate, it doesn't sound as good as when it's just bare steel. So I just take the block off and put it in a vise and get one of those nylon paint sanders and just sand the paint off of it.
That's the first time I've heard that.
Yeah.
But I'm not surprised by it, because those are the things. It all matters, actually, and people are
That's
like,
a little thing, but it makes a difference.
One star in the sky is one thing, 2, 3, 4, but you start putting all that together. Yeah. I'm going to take that one back. That's very interesting, because I can't answer it. I don't know why they do that.
The old bridges were just, I'm sure they do it so it doesn't rust.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the old Strats, the bridge, the blocks
nasty.
are all rusty and everything. They probably don't want them to rust. But when they put a thick layer
it's bound.
I've really done some extensive testing where, put a block on, play these same notes with the same. I'm pretty meticulous about, don't touch the tone knob,
right.
And now, take the bridge off, sand all the paint off the block, put it back on, put it all back together, and play those same 2 notes, and it's like,
it opens up.
Yeah,
I believe you.
Yeah, it's just a little thing, and you might not even notice it in the tracks, but it's a thing. It's there,
and guys that hear what they hear, they have that point of view. And I've had guys that tell me there's a little spot where the finish is rubbed off completely through the wood. They're like, don't fix that. That's like it's my sound is better with it. That's why the custom shop is in business, is to try to meet the needs of players that have a really, like you guys. I'm looking at 2 of the guys that have a pretty high level of execution and playing, and the things that matter to a beginner, a moderate, a blues hack, whatever, versus the type of expression that you guys are are going for out of a guitar. It takes a lot more intimacy. There's some actual, you know, physical things, you know, stylistically, and so you get into the compound radii, you get into that type of stuff.
That's another thing about the Sirs. It's kind of a hybrid between a Fender and a Gibson in a way, because the body and the pickups are Fender, but the neck is, the radius is a little bit flatter, so and big frets like Gibson frets.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a Strat that's a little easier for me to play, because I have a hard time with real high action. You know, like on a regular Fender, if the action's not high enough, then if you bend far, it frets out because the frets are small.
Well, yeah,
So,
especially on the vintage, right?
But yeah, on the vintage
It's
ones,
really
yeah.
bad.
So-
You've got
so-
a 7 1/4 radius and a tiny fret. You can't bend at all.
Yeah, you can't bend much.
So
you know,
now we're doing the we do compound radii on the fretboard.
Yeah,
but
you're
we
doing a
also
lot
do
more stuff
compound
now.
back
Right.
shapes.
Oh yeah.
We just started doing that this year.
Do you
which
do a D shape?
yeah, we do a D shape,
Oh,
and we
cool.
do a D to a modified C. So we've got some different compound back
Yeah.
shapes as well.
I use a
and-
D shape. That's why D shapes have always been more comfortable for me
Yeah,
than
more
C's for some reason. I don't know.
asymmetrical.
I like less wood behind the
Less
neck
club.
and more wood on the sides. you
Yeah.
know. It's just personal taste.
Yeah.
I doubt if there's any tone difference, but it, you know, I did notice one time I tried one of those Jeff Beck signature models.
Yes.
And you know, it's got the huge neck.
The
Huge
first,
neck,
the
right?
And
first
it makes a
ones.
that makes
it's
a
better
difference
now.
in the tone. I
oh, that's
think.
Oh,
there's
yeah, man.
there's
Well,
mass
look at
there,
that.
right?
Huge.
Look at the,
Lot
you
of
know,
wood, you know.
look at the size of the headstock, man. You know,
Makes a
with arch
difference,
tops,
yeah.
how you know D'Angelico and
Yeah.
all those guys, the headstock was like magic to them. You
Yeah.
know, just
Oh,
the amount of
absolutely. Even the
mass.
difference between a 60s, you know, a larger Strat headstock. Yngwie will tell you part of his sound is the fact that he plays the larger 70s
And a lot of people
headstocks.
like the larger headstocks
Yeah.
on the Strats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really, it's so subjective. There's so many, you know, 35 years ago or so, there was such an explosion. Whatever Fender wasn't doing right, whatever Gibson wasn't doing right, gave birth to unbelievable amount of companies, from Charvel and Performance and you know
Right.
all these brands,
and all
Kramer
and Ibanez and
yes,
Yamaha and all
yes.
them coming in. And,
it
you know,
just
the
really
lawsuit
created.
that lawsuit era for Gibson.
What
I mean,
happened
yeah.
that, how is it that Fender was able to trademark the headstock but not the body? I always wondered about that.
Yeah, so I was the guy that was deposed for that.
Sorry.
Wow.
That's
I don't
okay.
want to bring up any bad.
It's okay. It's another great Fender story.
he's still there though.
6 days.
Still there.
Wow.
6 days I was deposed.